So take me back, Frank. You are stressed out. You're frustrated. You're trying every trick in the book. Everybody has a dog and pony show, and they want you to pay $3,000 for that, $4,000 for that, and they're not working. You got partners who are saying, "Hey, Frank, you owe us money," or you messed up this partnership. What is your advice to somebody who is in that same situation right now?
Well, fortunately, today there are many, many, many more resources out there to help people, particularly if it's your primary residence that are going through a foreclosure. As a matter of fact, the Atlanta Urban League has a class on it every Monday at 2:00. It's online. And I have a friend that's going through foreclosure right now. I'm trying to get her to get involved with that. So there are many, many more resources available today as a result of the financial crisis back in 2000, 8, 9, 10. And that stuff is pretty much ironed out now. Whereas back before, when we would send in our 3 inches of documents by fax, they would lose it every month.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was called the MERS. That was electronic filing, people. The MERS, mortgage electronic something.
Registration system.
Right. So that's But anyway, yeah. I think today you're in a very good position because it's also not likely that you're not out of equity too. You probably have equity, so you don't have to necessarily walk away. You do have options. You can sell. You can there are options, and the main thing is don't bury your head in the sand. Don't ignore the problem. You have to be aggressive and make phone calls. Call HUD. Call your local city. In Atlanta, you can call 311, and they'll give you some resources to get you started. There are many resources out there today that did not exist, 15 years ago.
Absolutely. So take us back to your journey in Seattle. Was the foreclosure the cause of some of the other stressors in your life? Like you said, divorce, you said, jail, you said bankruptcy, or were those things kind of the precursor for the foreclosure? Does that make sense? Or was it just all kind of a downward spiral at one time,
It was it all went bad at one time because the foreclosure didn't just happen, right? Didn't just happen. My first foreclosure, I think, was December 2008. But up to that point, there comes a point where you can't make the payments anymore, right?
Yeah.
When you can't make it, when the money runs out, you cannot make, become financially insolvent. It doesn't just happen overnight. So it's that, right? So okay, I got my monthly expenses are $15,000. I got $20,000 left. What am I going to do? So you can see the signs before it happens, but then it starts to happen, and then you get then it's embarrassing. It's don't want to tell nobody because you think it's all these different emotions are happening at the same time. So eventually, the foreclosure was a result of rising interest rates, option arms going, the bank picking their, Do you remember option arms?
Yeah, I remember. I'm saying they adjust on you real quick, right?
I had an option arm where I could pick my payment, So it was all good while it was good, but then no more. Eventually it crashed. So
gotcha.
It was the foreclosure was just one of many things.
So Frank, when you were going through that, were you thinking about your future, or was it not until you said, "Hey, the music has ended, it's done"? Like, when did you go from dealing with the situation to thinking about your future and how you move forward?
Well, when that's going on, it's complete survival mode, right? So it's laser focus on a solution, complete survival mode. The future, there comes a point where by the time you get to the point where you're foreclosed, credit is destroyed. So that fairy tale is over.
Yeah.
So then I don't know how we're going to survive in the future. I guess the future's there, but we're thinking long-term future, but more short-term future. How are we going to put out this fire? And then the fire grows and grows and grows, and then it becomes completely unmanageable.
You moved to Atlanta and you started to rebuild. What was that journey like for you on the rebuild side?
The first house we bought here was 2011. My bankruptcy wasn't until 2013, so that would have been my wife's house.
Gotcha.
So it was very scary. Everything was scary, it's a whole new world, and leaving everything that's familiar, and so good of circumstances, and then eventually we got a Penske truck and drove across the country in 2013, and we settled down in Kennesaw.
Oh, Kennesaw. It was probably a lot different then than it is now.
It was 2000. It was. I mean, I haven't been there lately, but I'm sure it's not too much different. You know,
Okay.
I mean, it was a great. We really enjoyed Kennesaw, and then we eventually moved closer to Atlanta. So,
gotcha. So in Atlanta, you've been able to rebuild and you've been able to start afresh. And I didn't even know kind of all the background and context that you're sharing with our audience today, right? I just knew you because you're active in the Atlanta market. You are an affordable housing advocate. You are always trying to get other people into the real estate business, and you are a likable, well-rounded guy and husband and father. And so that's kind of what I knew of you. And so you've been able to just have a whole new start here. You've been able to have great success. What attributes, what characteristics, like what things allowed you to come to Georgia and be able to be successful this time around?
Well, my big blessing is my wife, of course. That was my, when through all that mess, I did find the love of my life and find a life partner.
That's awesome.
We got married in 2009 in the middle of all that.
Wow.
So that made things a lot easier because I was no longer, I had somebody that was going through a similar track in her world, and we were able to do it together. But because of the storm, opportunity is that you could buy houses very affordably in Atlanta versus Seattle. Mm-hmm. So we could come here and buy a house in Northwest Atlanta, and for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, like that. And that's what we did.
Awesome. And now you have been able to rebuild. You've been able to refocus, and you have a huge smile every time I see you. You are living a good life. You're traveling around the country, around the world, matter of fact, and life is different. So if you could go back in time and talk to the Frank Morales in 2008, when all this stuff was going on, what would you tell that Frank about his future?
DJ, I'm actually grateful for the experience, because I would tell myself, it's going to be okay, but the struggle is important. The struggle is important. This is what's going to create grit. It's going to be okay, and this is a necessary step in the process for you to get to where you have to go. And because, I know a lot of people back home where I'm trying to recruit them to come to Atlanta because I don't understand how regular people survive there today. I don't understand how if you're working at a restaurant, you're trying to survive in Seattle, compete with the Amazon kids, but they do, and they drive 80 miles to work 2 ways in traffic. So, and it's rough. And the way I see it out here in the Southeast United States is still very relatively affordable compared to out there. So that's what DJ, I'm grateful. I think I call it divine intervention, because had I not gone through that, had I been successful, it would have been okay, but I don't think it will be like it is now.
This wraps another episode of our Foreclosure Fix podcast. I'm grateful to Frank for being our first homeowner spotlight. He has left some big shoes that people will need to fill, man. So this was an amazing episode. Hey, if this mission resonates with you, please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell a friend. We are trying to get the message out to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. With that, we appreciate you for being part of the Foreclosure Fix family. Thank you. God bless you. And I love you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
The views and opinions on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we highly recommend you contact a qualified legal professional.